Question number 9, David Clendon.
Mr Speaker, my question to the Minister of Justice and asks, does she stand by her statement in Law Talk of 8 May 2015 that, quote, "We'd all agree it's wrong for someone to receive preferential treatment in our courts. That is, if you have more money or look a certain way, that you might get a different outcome to someone else in your situation"?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, yes, in the context it was given.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, David Clendon.
Does she agree that the outcome will be different for people with money as opposed to those without, given that her government has cut legal aid funding by over 15% in the last 5 years and intends to cut even more money next year?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
On behalf of the Minister, no, not at all. In fact, the international trend is quite clear across many countries towards self-represented litigants. There are many reasons for this, and they are far from simply economic. So to attribute all of this phenomena to system changes is clearly quite incorrect. In fact, it's misleading.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, David Clendon.
Does the Minister agree with Justice Helen Winkleman's statement that, quote, "Present levels of civil legal aid inevitably mean that many individuals cannot look to the courts to enforce their rights or obtain a remedy for a wrong"?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Mr Speaker, to some extent, I also agree very much with what she said, I think, in the same speech. There's no easy answers to this issue, but the profession has to take a very active part in understanding the nature of the problem and striving for the solution. Indeed, she is very clear that the profession, the judiciary, have a very strong role to play in what is a complex issue.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, David Clendon.
Does the Minister agree with her own Ministry of Justice officials, including the General Manager of the District Courts, who link the increase in the number of people self-representing with the reduced availability of legal aid?
The Honourable Simon Bridges.
On behalf of the Minister, as the member has said, that doesn't make very much sense at all. The introduction of legal aid, of course, is one aspect that goes to assist with access to justice. I think we all accept that access to justice is incredibly important. I'd make the point that legal aid is but one part of that, if you like, puzzle. And there are many things that the state provides in terms of its role to ensure that there is strong access to justice in New Zealand.
Supplementary question, David Clendon.
How can the Minister continue to claim that justice is accessible to everyone when the number of community law centres has fallen over the last 6 years despite increased demand, when legal aid funding has been cut, and despite the expressed concern of senior judges, lawyers, academics and ordinary New Zealanders?
Speaker,
Honourable Simon
Minister,
Bridges.
well, of course, in relation to community law centres, funding has been retained. And indeed, I'd note the basic ignorance in the question, because community law centres provide information, not accuracy.
Point of order, David Clendon.
Mr Speaker, I wonder if it's appropriate for the Minister to refer to a member as being ignorant in this House. I take offence at that.
It is certainly not helpful to the order of the House, and I'd appreciate if the Minister would just answer the question. Order! If the Minister wants to stay in the House, then I'd be grateful if he wouldn't chat while I'm suggesting that his answers could be far more helpful without creating disorder in this House. Does the Minister wish to complete his answer? Further supplementary?
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, David Clendon.
Given the widespread concern around access to justice issues, will the Minister consider supporting the Green Party's request to the Justice and Electoral Select Committee for an inquiry into the accessibility of justice in New Zealand?
Honourable Simon Bridges.
Speaker, on behalf of the Minister, no, because the courts are open to those who wish to avail themselves of them, because legal aid is there to support those who most need it in our society, and because support is available from the courts for those who self-represent.
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, David Clendon.
Mr Speaker, I seek leave to table research prepared today by the Parliamentary Library that shows a 15% cut to the legal aid budget over 5 years.
Order, order. That information will then be available easily for members to obtain. Question number 10, Fletcher Tabuto.